Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Council in the King Alfred Conference Chamber in the Guildhall, Winchester. Welcome especially to members of the public who have submitted questions to Council. Please can I advise the meeting of a few housekeeping matters this evening. Should the fire alarm sound, officers will assist and will direct us to the muster point, which is in Abbey Gardens. Members will be familiar with the location of the toilet facilities in the Guildhall, which are located both on the ground floor and second floor, and can be reached through either entrance or exit door from the chambers. Please don't use the lift. Regarding our meeting procedures this evening, members, please note that you each have a push button or push to talk microphone on your desk. There is a technician in the room monitoring their audio output and will assist should there be any issues. Please can I remind everyone to indicate in the usual way by standing when wanting to address the meeting. I will call your name when it is your turn to speak. Members and guests, can everyone please ensure that mobile devices are on silent so that they do not disturb the meeting? Finally, can I advise that this meeting is being audio recorded and live streamed from the website and then can be found next to the meeting details, where the recording will remain thereafter. A video of this meeting will also be recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel. The first item of business this evening are the minutes of the previous meeting of Council. Members, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 6th of July 2022, which are set out on pages 5 to 11 of your agenda pack. May I sign these as a correct record? Thank you. The next item is disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosures of interest to be made regarding the business before us tonight? Councillor Todd. Councillor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest as a member of the County Council.
Thank you. Councillor Warwick.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's the same declaration for me as a member of the Hampshire County Council and Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. And Councillor Porter.
And the same declaration for me.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next agenda items are announcements. My first announcement this evening is regarding former Winchester City Councillor, Mayor of Winchester and Hampshire County Councillor Susan Glasspool, who passed away on the 17th of September. Mrs. Glasspool was elected to Winchester City Council and represented the Itchen Valley Ward from 1983 until 1999. She was Mayor of Winchester 1993 to 94 and was also a Hampshire County Councillor and was made an honorary alderman by the County Council in 2010. A former resident of Itchen Abbas, Mrs. Glasspool had recently moved to Edinburgh to be closer to one of her children. I will be attending Mrs. Glasspool's funeral on Friday the 21st of October at 12:30 in Itchen Abbas Church. There will be a wake afterwards at Itchen Abbas Village Hall and everyone is invited. The family have requested that those wishing to attend contact my secretary so that catering arrangements can be finalised. Please can I ask that the council now stand in silent tribute to her memory. My secretary has issued members who have confirmed that they are attending with further details. Please can I also remind members that this year's Remembrance Sunday service will be on the 13th of November. Please look out for your invitation from the Mayor's Secretary. Please can I now announce my forthcoming charity events. I'm sure that many of you are very much looking forward to my gin tasting event, which is to be held in Abbey House on Thursday, the 17th of November at 7 p.m. and is being conducted by the Cabinet Rooms. Members, you will have already noted that my masquerade ball was rearranged and will be held the following evening on Friday, the 18th of November. That's all right. Finally, this evening, please can I remind you all that on the morning of Saturday, the 15th of October, in celebration of their 30th anniversary, the Adjutant General's Corps, who are one of our existing Freedom regiments, will be exercising their freedom rights with the parade in Winchester. This will be an excellent spectacle and one that I am very much looking forward to. I am especially pleased to report to you all that the Corps' Deputy Colonel-in-Chief, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Gloucester, will be in attendance. If you haven't done so already, please can you advise my secretary if you are attending as soon as possible, and further information will be sent to you. That actually isn't the final thing, because I'd like to say a huge congratulations to our very own David Blakemore for his efforts in the 10K run last weekend in about 40 minutes, okay? Not bad at all. And lastly, if you haven't met Mr. Neil MacArthur yet, may I introduce him and welcome him to his first council meeting. Thank you. Leader. Oh. Leader, do you have any announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple of announcements. First of all, I greatly appreciated the debate at the last full council about how we can all work together to protect our rivers from pollution, and I appreciated the fact that it was unanimously supported, as well as the amendment that was put in. One of the actions on it was to write on behalf of the council to the Minister of State for Planning. It took slightly longer than expected for the government to decide who the Minister of State for Planning actually was. But when the decision was made, Mr. Lee Rowley was appointed, I did immediately write to him. I know that one of the other themes of the motion was that we should collaborate with neighbouring authorities on the subject of water quality. And so I'd like to quickly report back on a meeting I attended on your behalf at the Partnership for South Hampshire. This actually has a much wider scope of work than you might think. The debate we often have here suggests that it's only about housing numbers. And indeed, the meeting didn't touch on the statement of common ground, which is still a work in progress, and the potential impact on our duty to cooperate. The main focus of the meeting was on nutrient neutrality. And so I had a chance on your behalf to interrogate representatives from Southern Water and the Environment Agency and Natural England about the work that they are doing to improve our water quality. We are in partnership with Partnership for South Hampshire on the issue of nutrient neutrality and water quality, and the officers there offer us excellent support. But it was a very helpful meeting, which I'm happy to debrief anybody who is interested on in more detail. And we have identified some new ways that we can work with our neighbouring authorities to collaborate on nutrient neutrality issues ongoing. And I will be happy to keep you up to date with this in the future. Something else I promised you at the last meeting was that I would meet with leaders of neighbouring authorities in order to discuss matters of common interest. And I have, as promised, met Councillor Alex Rennie, who is the leader of Havant Borough Council, in Waterlooville, to discuss their plans for the regeneration of Waterlooville and how residents in our district can be involved in that. Obviously, this is very important to those living in the western part of Waterlooville, but actually there are other communities that primarily look to Waterlooville, such as Denmead, or frequent users of Waterlooville, such as Denmead and Southwark, and we stressed the point that it was important that they be included in any consultation and engagement as well. We also touched on other areas where they are running consultation which will be of interest to residents in the district, such as, for example, their plans to invest in the Waterlooville Leisure Centre and making sure that, again, the needs, the information we have about the recreational needs of people in our district are taken into account in their planning, and we promised to collaborate on that. And finally, we did talk about the opportunity for the West of Waterlooville Forum to have greater involvement in discussions about regeneration in Waterlooville, although obviously that's primarily a matter for the members of the forum to discuss, but we have said that we're happy to discuss with Havant about the terms of reference to ensure that cross-Waterlooville issues also can be included in scope where necessary. I've also had two communications from the County Council that I need to tell you about that are of interest, I think, to all members. The first is the reopening discussion about a potential county deal, or the Pan-Hampshire deal, as this is referred to. This is potentially creating effectively a new tier that sits above the county and covers the area of Hampshire, Portsmouth, Southampton, the Isle of Wight, and potentially Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, which for those of you who are Hampshire nationalists will recognise that at least in part seeks to undo the damage done by 1974 local government reorganisation. There are a lot of things in there that I think would be of interest to members. I will make sure that the most recent information that we get from the county is circulated, but if people have any views that they wish me to represent in future meetings with the county, please let me know. The second one, where we may be asked to respond at quite short notice ahead of the next council meeting, is the question of investment zones, where central government has written to all local authorities asking them whether there are any areas that they wish to bid to be considered as investment zones. We don't have anything equivalent to that within the district at the moment. We don't have an enterprise zone, and we're not part of the Freeport initiative apart from a small section of the M3. Which are likely to be the areas that are favoured. But if there are any areas, the submission will be made by the county on October the 14th. We do have the power of veto over our own district. But if there are any areas that people think should be considered, then do please let me know. And if there are any areas that you would also want us not to consider, please let me know that as well. A further announcement is about a new appointment to Cabinet. I'm absolutely delighted to announce that Councillor Kathleen Becker has been appointed to Cabinet as the Cabinet Member for Inclusion and Engagement. This is a very important priority for this administration, and I'm absolutely delighted that Kathleen is joining the Cabinet in that role and strengthening the team. And finally, those of you who are at Cabinet may have heard the announcement about a new cost of living initiative, and I wanted to make sure that all members of council were aware of that. It was also scrutinised at Health and Environment Committee, I think, last night. We have announced a £200,000 cost of living intervention based on supporting households in the Winchester district who are struggling with the rising cost of living. The measures include a cost of living emergency grant fund that will be used to provide additional support to partner organisations who provide advice and practical support to residents. This includes help to reduce energy bills and manage energy bills, help to access benefits and grants, help to access food and other types of emergency support. Calling a cost of living summit to bring together partner organisations from across the Winchester district to discuss how we can best work together to coordinate and maximise our efforts and impact, and setting up a dedicated web page based on models we've seen in other places to signpost people to find the information they need quickly and easily with direct support, links to available support. This is very much part of our desire to support the people under most pressure in our community, but it's also importantly fully consistent with our climate objectives. Cutting energy, helping people to cut their energy use, cut carbon, also helps them cut bills, and that's yet another reason why this is such an important initiative for us. And those are all my announcements, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ludo. Chief Executive, do you have any? Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, apologies received for this evening's meeting from Councillors Cunningham, Ferguson, Lumby, McLean, Miller, Rutter, Scott and Williams. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Lee.
Mr. Mayor, I can hardly hear what's going on. I'm sure the traffic's upset with the driving, but I only heard 1, 2 and 3. Is anyone else having difficulty?
If you just hang on a second, we'll.
You could move across the centre bit.
All right, councillors, please. I can't remember your name now. Councillor Pearson, we've just turned the volume up on your microphone.
It does help, but I just wondered if it would be better on this occasion if members sat down so the microphone is closer to the oral cavity. That's not rude.
Haven't got one. Right, thank you. Right. The next agenda item is item 4, questions from members of the public. Welcome once again to members of the public who are here this evening and who have submitted questions for council to answer. I understand that we have received one question for this evening's meeting. All members have copies of the question received which have been circulated electronically. Printed copies are also available in the public seating area. Please can I now call upon David McLean to ask his question. Mr. McLean, please could you address the meeting using the... Sorry?
David Killeen.
Yeah. Could you use the microphone on the lectern? Please can you ask your question as it is written on the order paper, or if you prefer, simply refer members to this. You will have 2 minutes to speak and ask your question. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors and officers. My question that you have in front of you is, I understand that there is a provision of 1,450 homes built into the local plan Regulation 18 draft relating to push. Can the council please explain in detail why this figure has been used?
Mr. Killeen, I'm actually going to reply. Hopefully you can hear me if I stand up like this. Good, thank you. You will know from having attended the scrutiny the other day that your understanding is in fact incorrect. There is a buffer of 1,450 houses to be built between now and 2039 in the local plan, but this has not been put in as a response to the Partnership for South Hampshire, nor is it reserved for any request from the Partnership for South Hampshire. The buffer serves a wider purpose, ensuring that we have a sound local plan and we manage the risk of several points. The first is central government changes to the standard method of calculating the required housing numbers. The previous revision increased our requirement by around 1,000 houses. Any developer or landowner designed to withdraw their site from local plan allocation is also hopefully covered by this. And the third reason is any sites being withdrawn from allocation through the local plan as a result of consultation or any other new information received. The fourth one is that request for housing numbers received via the legal duty to cooperate, although importantly, as you will know, the duty to cooperate is not the same as a duty to agree. So all of the professional advice we've received confirms that a headroom figure of 1,450 is considered to be a reasonable buffer, based on our understanding of the current picture and how housing numbers could grow before we get to the next stage in the plan-making process. It's not unusual and actually makes good sense for councils preparing their draft local plans to build in some headroom when it comes to the housing numbers. The figure of 1,450 gives us that headroom, and there are several reasons for doing, which I'll briefly cover in this response. In the Reg 18 draft local plan, we want to ensure that any increase in our own housing requirement, using the government standard method calculation, which has to be refreshed each year, can be addressed without having to go back and identify additional land which would meet a higher requirement after we've consulted on the local plan. That would merely add a delay. This is because the final housing figure is not fixed until we reach the next key stage in the plan process, which is the Reg 19 local plan, and will not be at that point until the autumn next year. That's our timetable. Because our housing in the district is expensive and the number of homes to be built increases as unaffordability rises, it's more likely that our current figure of 715 dwellings per annum will rise rather than decrease when recalculated in 2023. To give you an idea, the number was 665 just about 18 months ago. So it also builds in some flexibility in the event that sites we are allocating for development become unavailable after we consult on the draft plan. We must also accommodate changes that may be needed because of valid objections to or comments on particular sites. And we also need to work with neighbouring local authorities under the national requirement of duty to cooperate, including those in the Partnership for South Hampshire, to consider any wider unmet housing needs arising, because some authorities are unable to meet their own needs in full. It's therefore prudent to allow for a degree of growth in the overall housing figure to be able to potentially accommodate some of this need. I hope that is a solution to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Mr. Killeen, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Slightly unfortunate I had to submit that question before the scrutiny meeting, as you know. So, but thank you for your response. My supplementary question is in terms of the housing land supply. Applying the annual average requirements to deliver this plan would, in my numbers, require 819 homes per annum. Over the last 10 years, the council has achieved an average of 551 homes per annum and only actually exceeded 800 on 2 occasions. Why does the council now think these numbers in this plan are now achievable?
I'm not, I don't have the data in front of me, but I certainly do know that one of the reasons has been the slow delivery of the Barton Farm site. So that site is building up faster now, but at the beginning was extremely slow. And so that has been a problem in the total number. That's why they're still included in this time's plan. And the other thing is, over the last 3 years, we've had nitrates come to us and now phosphates come to us, which doesn't make it easy to make planning permissions go forward. So I will find out the exact reason for all of the others, though. But it is actually made in a report in the Shmara at the end of the year. So we may look at that and refer to it together, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, and to Mr McLean for your question. Please may I remind you that your question and the answer will be published on the Council's website in due course. Of course, you are very welcome to stay for the remainder of the evening. Agenda item 5 is regarding consideration and determination of the recommended minute of Cabinet held on the 22nd of September, reconvened from the 14th of September. Mrs Kirkman, would you please introduce?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, members. Agenda item 5 is the recommended minute of Cabinet of the 22nd of September 2022 regarding King George V New Build Pavilion, request for additional budget. Report CAB 3363 refers, and this is included in your agenda pack on pages 15 to 26. The supplementary agenda pack includes the draft minute of the Cabinet meeting on page 3, and also the corresponding draft minute of the Winchester Town Forum meeting, also held on the 22nd of September, which is on page 5, and both are included as background information for Council. The report's recommendations are for Council to approve an additional capital budget of £1 million funded from Community Infrastructure Levy funds to enable the proposed new build King George V Pavilion, bringing the total budget for this project to £3.3 million. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lerney, would you move the recommended minute of Cabinet, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We all recognise that we are living in some of the most difficult times for a generation, but there is still joy around. In July, England's Lionesses raised the spirits of the nation when they lifted the Women's European Cup. Those players who gave us so much pleasure started out in junior clubs across the country. Here in Winchester, we have the Winchester City Flyers, one of the largest female grassroots football clubs in the UK, with 22 youth teams, 3 senior teams, and more than 480 women and girls as registered players. However, they and the many other teams from across the area who use the King George V playing fields have to operate out of 2 pretty horrible old pavilions. Pavilions which don't meet modern standards and provide facilities more likely to discourage than encourage sporting activity. Currently, we're not only letting down the football and cricket teams using the King George V playing fields, but also local people who have very limited access to community facilities. Clearly, we aren't where we would like to be on this project. The budget for the King George V Pavilion was agreed in 2021 on the advice of external cost consultants, but a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. Construction has faced a whirlwind of material and labour shortages, with wage inflation and high energy prices adding to costs across the board. The significant number of tenders we received for this project demonstrates that what we're talking about today is the market price. Going out to the market again at a time when construction costs are projected to continue to rise is unlikely to lead to a lower price. The importance of this scheme to women's football in our area is illustrated by the willingness of the Football Foundation to contribute £450,000 to the new building. But additional funding is still needed, and it is proposed that we use Community Infrastructure Levy from the town and district to complete this project. We do have a choice. We can do nothing, let our facilities continue to deteriorate, or we can move forward and build an accessible, sustainable, modern building large enough to cater for the needs of multiple teams, as well as providing a club room which can be used by the local community. So I'm urging this council today to choose joy, approve the additional capital budget and give this district another facility we can be proud of. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Early. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. But I'd like to reserve my right to reply.
Thank you. Yep. Before I say. Do we have any questions? Councillor Bolton.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. A very commendable project, but in the interest of transparency, and because I feel that residents in the Upper Meon Valley will want to know, could you explain to us or publish how you arrived, or the rationale behind how you arrived at the distribution of the SIL funding? Because there is quite a heavy weighting towards the district, and I think it's only right that.
Councillor Looney.
In terms of the distribution of the funding, as you're aware, when SIL is collected, then 15% goes to the local community, 85% goes to the district. When we've had a look at this, we've agreed with the town forum that the proportion should be of the additional funding should be 20% to 80%. So that was done through agreement with effective.
So forgive me, but my issue is how you arrived at the allocation. Was the district involved in agreeing to 8% versus 20 to town? Forgive me, it may be something to do with my ignorance of how these processes work. I'm still quite fresh at this.
Thank you. It's important to recognise that the town is part of the district. A considerable amount of district SIL is raised in the town area, and just as in other areas, we use that to fund a whole variety of different infrastructure and community facilities across all of the people who we represent.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cook, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, excited is the word I'd like to use first of all. I'm excited to have this paper here in front of us today, and joyful. I'm excited as well to finally see there are a great number of interests from contractors. I'm excited for the district because it will be the district that will use it as well, because I know there are, as Councillor Lenny said, many players, young ladies. The Winchester Flyers, City Flyers, should I say. I'm excited for them. Then I move to the word disappointed. And the reason I'm disappointed probably sort of carries on from Councillor Bolton that has spoken already. I'm disappointed to see that the Football Federation have given 450,000 when I consider what footballers earn. They sometimes earn that in a week. I appreciate this is not a football club that own it. It's owned by the council. I am getting to the question, Mr. Mayor. I don't see any money coming from the cricket, which concerns me. I may have read the documents wrong. But my question is, and it refers to page 19 of the paper, 2.9, that Winchester City Council will continue to seek additional funding wherever possible. My question is, where are they trying to get that money from? Is it lottery? I'd like to know more, please. And we would also like to see what they're doing and not just have a paper that's served on us this evening. But I am excited about the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Cook. It's a very good one. Unfortunately, the officers who've been doing this can't give you chapter and verse on all the applications they've made for funding and all the avenues they've looked down. But they do keep regular eyes out on any pots of funding that become available. I think it has been disappointing that the cricketing authorities haven't been willing to fund facilities in the district, to my knowledge, but then that may reflect their financial position. As you're aware, cricketers don't earn as much as footballers do.
Thank you very much. Councillor Warwick, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just following on the football theme, if I may, and I was pleased to see that the Football Foundation have awarded a grant of 450,000. The King George V Pavilion has been in discussion for many years. It's been at Cabinet. We did a public consultation in 2018, and I think in 2015, members of the Highcliffe community spoke at Cabinet asking for us to improve on the two pavilions. So this is really positive. I can see the costs has escalated hugely. But one thing that Janet Berry, many of you will know Janet, former councillor, requested back at Cabinet, and I undertook to do this, was to remember Winchester's greatest footballer, who is Terry Payne. And Terry was born in Highcliffe, just in one of the roads adjacent to the pavilion. He played for Winchester City Football Club, then moved to Southampton. He made 800 appearances for Southampton Football Club, which is a record. But Terry played in the 1966 England team. He played in the qualifying match against Mexico. He wasn't in the final where England won the World Cup, but he was awarded his World Cup medal in 2009, as several of those players who weren't actually in the final. So we, at the time, undertook that we would at least put a plaque to Terry, perhaps invite him. Terry's still around. He comes to Southampton from time to time, to perhaps open it or have a plaque or a room named after him. So I'd just like to ask if that could be considered. Thank you.
That was your question. Yes, please.
Absolutely, I think that's a fantastic suggestion, and we'll certainly consult on not only whether that would be appropriate, but whether the community have any other ideas for naming the pavilion, or, as you say, any rooms within it.
Thank you. Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Lurney mentioned the development has raised the money. I wonder what impact Highcliffe and Bar End have endured, and from which development to justify the expenditure of £1.2 million of district SIL funds on this scheme for a community and clubs facility.
Thank you. This facility is one which serves a much wider area than the Highcliffe community. And of course, we have inflicted a £40 million leisure centre on that community, which many of them weren't actually very happy about.
Thank you. Councillor Kern, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And likewise, I think this is going to be a fantastic resource for our town and for our district. I was going to mention Terry Payne as well. Obviously, he grew up playing on those playing fields and was a fantastic member of that 1966 World Cup winning squad. Obviously, looking at the numbers, residents are going to see that SIL percentage, and obviously the district has appreciate the answer already in the sense that the town is part of the district. When they see this number of 3.3 million for a project within the city, in the town, and they see the new sports centre, I know lots of rural residents are going to ask me, what about the rural sports clubs in Bishop's Waltham and Wickham, which have contributed to the SIL with constant development and lots of new housing projects? Is there going to be a commitment to providing sports facilities? Because I know lots of those communities would be happy with just 1/10 of 3.3 million to improve their sports facilities in the district. So can I just ask, it's a question we're going to be asked, is there going to be a pledge from this council to also support our rural sports clubs? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Yes, of course, we'd be very happy to hear of any proposals coming forward to Bishop's Waltham for new sports facilities. We are aware that, like my own ward, Bishop's Waltham has had a considerable amount of development there and has not necessarily brought forward proposals to spend the SIL that has been raised.
Thank you. Councillor Horrell, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to ask the question. And I think there's universal support this evening for the new pavilion as part of our overall support for the health and wellbeing agenda, and also alongside our fantastic new sport and leisure park. My question really is around governance, which I have raised already with the Cabinet, but I didn't get an answer. Sadly missing from the document in terms of how we will manage the governance on such an important resource, given that it is going to cost the district 3.3 million. Mr. Mayor, I understand the booking system will be as we currently have it, but actually my question is that you've got a huge number of external groups, you have the community groups locally. How are we going to ensure the appropriate opportunity for all those groups to be involved in the activities of the new pavilion and the expectations that they may all have? I think governance has been overlooked, and I'd welcome the opportunity to hear from the portfolio holder how we're going to tackle that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's a shame Councillor Ferguson isn't here to go into the latest detail on that. In fact, we have been discussing with stakeholders around this. There will be I'm not sure what it's going to be called, but a consultative committee which will monitor the use of the facility, make sure the council is, if you like, managing it in a way which is serving all of those stakeholders. It is actually a condition of the Football Foundation grant that this happens, so you can be reassured that we not only is this something that we want to do, but there will be people outside making sure that we actually do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Isaac, please.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Frank, can you hear me okay? So I know, no, clearly not. I noticed with interest that the portfolio holder mentioned community facilities, and that whilst 3.3 million is a lot to spend, of which taking a further 1.2 million from the SIL money, I know many residents within our local community in a rural setting would wish to ask the following question, and that is, that's a lot of money to spend in an area when residents or people visiting our town can't actually spend a penny in our community facilities with our toilets, which are still listed as open 24/7 and haven't been for months. Are listed as cleaned once a week, once a day, 7 times a week, and again, not the case. So whilst I don't have any issue locally with people, it's a great initiative. When you're taking an increase in SIL money, residents would like to know when they're going to be able to spend a penny, let alone 1.2 million. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may answer this one. Alresford is the ward that has spent the highest proportion of district and local SIL in the local area. So the decisions have effectively been made in your ward as to where the money should go. And if we were to look at where money had been spent proportionately more than any other ward, it is actually your own one. In terms of the plan for toilets, if you look later in the meeting, there is a question that asks specifically about this. We are currently doing a fabric review of how money should be spent. But I think the point that is ultimately comes out of this is we do need to be having conversations across the district where there are extra pressure as a result of extra population as to how do we spend SIL more effectively. And if there are places where improved toilet facilities are part of that SIL spending, then I think it will be a productive conversation for ward members and the council more widely to have as to how that money should be spent.
Thank you. Councillor Clementson, please. Right, thank you. Right, that is the end of questions. You've already had one question. Everybody's had one question. No, it's no, but it also hangs out the evening, and we don't all need to stay here half the night to do that, do we? You've had a question. We'll go to Councillor Pearson, and then we're going to close the questions, and we'll go on to debate. You did. I said we're going on to Councillor Pearson's question. He hasn't had a question yet, and then we're going on to debate. Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Make a reference to a procedure because there's no procedure.
Mr Mayor, perhaps I can advise. Mr Mayor, you have to allow sufficient time for questions and debate when a motion is before council. It is at your discretion about whether there has been sufficient time taken for questions. It is usual protocol in these meetings that you allow one question. Sometimes, Mr Mayor, at your discretion, you have allowed more than one question. Thank you.
Right. Okay. We've been on this questions for half an hour now. So I'll have Councillor Pearson's question, please. Right. Debate, please.
Councillor Pearson, can I open debate, Mr Mayor?
Yep. Councillor Pearson, would you like to open the debate?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also a great supporter of this pavilion. We were talking about it the first time round I was mayor, and again the second time round when we had Mick Shannon, who came to support the Winchester Flyers. Well, his granddaughter actually is a captain of one of the teams, or was at that time. Lisa Griffiths and I greeted Mick. Mick is a resident, or was a resident, of Swanmore, hence the connection between himself and myself, not just the fact that I was mayor. We said at that time, in fact, we promised the Flyers that something would be done about the pavilion, and I'm glad we're getting to a position where that is about to happen. Although I must admit, at that time, none of us realised the actual cost that it was going to be. I'm assuming we're not talking about gold-plated taps, but actually facilities that are usable by everyone. Now, I recall going back again in the past, I think it was prior to 2006, the then leader of council managed to obtain funds to expand the community facilities in Swanmore College as being the only secondary school to cover the whole of the southern parishes at that time. Indeed, that has happened, and a lot of CIL money has come forward to assist in that, but mostly from the county rather than from the district, although some did come from the district, and I think, Leader, you'll find that in the distant records, or the archives, I should say, rather than the current records. But I compare that with the difficulty one of my parishes, Shedfield, had in raising funds for a pavilion at their sports field. And they did eventually get a CIL grant, but it was with difficulty and a lot of negotiation. Mind you, it's not the building that we're building at King George V, but indeed need it be because the numbers being involved are not the same. But it is a I'm not quite sure how to phrase it these days. It's for men and women. I'm trying to ease my way through him, her, they, whatever. I don't necessarily speak that language, but I'm sure most of you will recognise that actually I'm trying to be helpful, but at the same time, regretting that some of the parishes, actually in the southern parishes, because they have very few houses, Shedfield, for example, within Sherrill Heath and Shedfield itself, have not had any houses built. So their CIL money has got to come from the city or from the county. And therein lieth the difficulty that some of the parishes have. My own parish and Waltham Chase, two villages, Waltham Chase and Shedfield, have had CIL money, but not to the extent that we could use £1 million for it. It's the sheer size of this that staggers people, as welcome as this venture is. Let there be no doubt I do support the venture because it's so desperately needed to support particularly the Winchester City Flyers, and that was a promise I made on behalf of the city at that time with Mick Shannon, alongside Lisa Griffiths, who I think at that time was the portfolio holder for Sports and Leisure. And I'm glad something, I'll be even gladder when it's actually built. But please, 3.3 and going above that would be very, very difficult to justify at this age.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Evans, please. Push the right hand button. That's it.
Right, thank you. I wasn't going to speak, Mr. Mayor, tonight in debate, but I have been absolutely amazed at the whole string of Conservative contributions, nitpicking about this and that. We all recognise the importance of sport and the quality of healthy living, and it is really vital that residents have the opportunity
Can you turn your mic on again, please?
Didn't touch it. I don't need to start again, do I? Because I have quite a loud voice. And so I, as a Southern Parishes member, I'm fully supportive of contributing this money to ensure that the King George V Pavilion has this modern, adequate facility. King George V, well, I know that King Charles III was going to call himself George VII, but didn't. But that just indicates the age of this pavilion. And so we have, in the past, and in my time on the council, given substantial monies to the district. We've given Denmead a lot. The leader has already quoted the money given to Alresford. We've given money to Swanmore and provided a hall there, and Whiteley. So that is recognising the importance of sport across the district. And I look forward to seeing this wonderful facility which we are going to offer, not only our residents, but those who wish to use it. We all recognise that local authorities will build these facilities, but not necessarily the residents of the local authority will use it. And that's the way it is. Down in Wickham, we're nearer Fareham. Not that it's got much to sing about, but this is something great. And with that and the leisure centre next door, great. I think we're doing our residents and those who wish to continue with their sport a great favour by building this wonderful facility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Brooke, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Evans, can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. I just wanted to say I am really pleased that the pavilion's coming forwards. It's something that's been too long in the waiting, and I'm really pleased to see it. I also welcome Councillor Todd's suggestion earlier of speaking about how to better spend SIL around the district. I have said for the past 3 years, when we've approved the next round of SIL spending, that 250,000 that was the amount instigated in my time as portfolio holder. It definitely isn't enough and should have been increased. And it never is. It's still rolled forward to 250,000 for the rest of the district every year. So I'm really pleased to have that discussion with you, Councillor Todd. I'd be particularly pleased to engage with you on how better to spend SIL around the district, because I think there will be a lot of questions from the rural communities. I know Councillor Evans has called it nitpicking and has just listed some areas that have had SIL money, but it's not in a similar ballpark to £1 million. So I really welcome the opportunity, Councillor Todd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tipper Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose I just want to say that I think the question's been generally reasonable ones. I'm a city ward councillor and I appreciate rural councillors will have concerns and you know, scrutiny is a good thing in all circumstances, and particularly a fantastic idea about the Terry Payne tribute. And indeed, it'd be fantastic if we could look to have a tribute to someone that the women and girls that use the facilities playing football can really aspire to, and there are plenty of those in indeed this year's Lioness team. The increase in costs for this project aren't a surprise, completely unavoidable. One need only look at ONS statistics for the increase in cost of materials. The price of steel, as an example, has increased 70% in 1 year, according to ONS, since May 2021. So it's completely understandable where we are. But I would say the additional costs for this are far outweighed by the potential benefits, and I don't think anyone is going to really disagree with that. At last night's Health and Environment Policy Committee, it was identified that sport for women and girls were a key group for targeting of investment to address health inequalities, and Sport England identified them as a key group. And so this project clearly does that. And indeed, women's football was banned by the FA 100 years ago. And fast forward to 2022, and it's now well, yeah, well, exactly right, Councillor Pearson. Now it's the fastest growing sport in the UK. And in 2020, the FA's 3-year game plan for growth strategy revealed 3.4 million women and girls were now involved in football. And that was 2 years before the Lionesses' success this summer. So imagine the momentum behind it now. So this pavilion helps put Winchester on the map for women and girls football as a centre for it, not just in the district, which all the district can use. I don't think anyone would disagree that it will be accessible to all the district. Indeed, we should look for ways of making it as accessible to all the district as possible to maybe address some of the concerns in that regard. But not only the district, the county, and indeed the south of England, it becomes a centre of football for women and girls, which is extremely exciting. Finally, and it's not just the investment in women and girls sport, there is clear potential for the facilities to be used by other sports, as discussed, and indeed other football teams, including the men's football teams, such as Winchester Castle, who I will give a quick plug to, who are a fantastic local community football club that would, I think, really benefit from additional places to play. And indeed, there's the possibility for income from users and potential sponsors, meaning that although this is a large capital investment, it's not one that won't see some potential return. So in summary, imperative we seize this opportunity to show that Winchester District leads the way in promoting and really bringing forward one of the UK's fastest growing and indeed most exciting sport, and that is women and girls football.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Before I carry on, at the beginning of the evening, I did say, would you indicate in the usual manner and stand when you're speaking to the chair? So far, most councillors have decided to sit on the back of their seats. That is not the way it's done. Thank you. Councillor Reid, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too wasn't going to speak until my parish was mentioned. Denmead has been under continual development since 1983. It was the first community in Winchester to receive its own local plan. And since that point in time, it still remains short of 17.5 acres of land for open space and recreation. Parishes, Mr. Mayor, are responsible for claiming SIL money, not ourselves in the district. However, I must admit I was a little taken back by the amounts that were being proposed in this application. I have seen through a planning application the state of the current two structures. It came before the planning committee literally some time ago. I can understand where they're coming from as a community, and we do want the best for all of our communities. And I think it is important that, yes, Winchester is the market town for this area, and I think that they should have a reasonable facilities. Saddened that other sporting authorities were not contacted with regard to putting contributions forward. We've heard about the cricket club. Yes, they don't get paid as much as footballers, but believe me, they're not actually badly paid at that. I fully support the principle of this development. Winchester is in desperate need to replace the two current structures that are there, undoubtedly. So, Mr. Mayor, I thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak, and I hope that this goes through.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Cromwelson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully my microphone isn't too far away from my, my audible orifice. Right, I'm going to say a few words about why I see the King George V Pavilion as a district facility. A number of questions have been raised that imply that it might not be considered. It might be considered just a town facility. And it's not just for Winchester City. I'm going to talk specifically about girls' football. And I know the facility will support an awful lot of other things as well. So I don't think the business case is based on just girls' football, but I know a bit about girls' football. Prior to being elected into this forum, I served for about 10 years with the Worthies Youth Football Club as the development officer. And of all the many things that I was very proud of, the thing I'm most proud of is that we established girls' football in the Worthies. And there are some structural differences about how girls' football operates compared with, say, boys. It's much harder getting girls' teams established. With boys, all you've got to do is get a couple of lads and an adult to support them, and the whole thing snowballs. You can usually get at least one team, if not two teams, from every year in a primary school. With girls' football, you don't get that. There's not as many that are already primed to want to play football in the first instance. Now that is going to change because of the success of the Lionesses and the publicity it's got, but it's still not at the same level. So one of the things that's different, and I learned the hard way how to do this, is that if you want to try and establish a girls' football team to support the girls in, which is how parents normally do it, you've got a couple of girls, one of whom's maybe your daughter, you want to get it started, getting the team together is really hard. So what I did is I went out to neighbouring areas, the nearest ones to the Worthies. So, for example, we established relationships with South Swanston Primary School. We established relationships with Micheldever Primary School. We established relationships with St. Peter's, whom we had a connection with. And from those connections, we managed to get enough of an input that we were able to establish the first team. When I say the first team, not the first one that we had established, not the first and second team. You get my drift. So the point being is that it's not, when I talk about the Worthies Girls was an umbrella for girls that came from all in the north side of Winchester, so the northern part of our district. The second thing that's different, and I was really grateful for the support of the sports and development team in Winchester City Council at the time, so Amanda Ford and Chris Peach, who some of you may remember, they were absolutely brilliant in supporting me with this. And one of the questions that I came up with was, okay, if we get a team together, what are they going to do? Where are they going to play? And that's when I learned about the Winchester and District Girls and Ladies Football League. And I learned that there was this facility down at the other side of town, an area that I wasn't necessarily that familiar with, and that they could play down there. They could have their home ground down there. They didn't have wouldn't have to try and force them into the space on Eversley Park, which is already oversubscribed, and they could go down there and play as a home team down at the KGV alongside other girls. So what you get down there is a very different experience to the experience you'll get on Eversley Park, where it's predominantly boys' teams. You might get a few girls playing, but it's predominantly boys' teams playing home and away with all the rivalry that that kind of engenders. Whereas down at the King George V place, you get a more festival of sport experience. It's a much less rivalry, but you get a lot less aggro than you do with boys' football. So there's a couple of structural differences that mean it's important to have that centre of facility. Now, talking about the Flyers, Flyers is absolutely fantastic club, very successful, but it's not just pulling from Winchester City. They pull in all the best from around the district. I mean, it's one of the bones of contention for the other clubs, which is whenever you get really talented players in your team, the Flyers come along and poach them. and it's like, as a club, you're taking your team to the KGV, which is the home ground for the Flyers as well, and they all see that you've got some really talented girls, and then inevitably the most talented will go to the teams that are playing at the highest levels and give them perhaps a path through to playing, getting trials with Southampton girls or Reading girls. And I can see the mayor is trying to wrap me up.
You've had your 5
I just
minutes.
wanted to get that bit in to say it is a district facility. It shouldn't be seen as just a town facility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for tolerating my overrun.
Thank you. Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I was going to ask before I was told to sit down was me to ask for the information that Councillor Todd referred to, that list for ward by ward contribution to the SIL pot and the expenditure from that pot. I'd be grateful if such a list could be circulated to members. On the debate, I have strongly divided feelings about this proposal. On the one hand, I have been indirectly involved with women and girls football around Winchester for much of the last 20 years. The sight of 30 or 40 girls' teams playing on KG5 pitches on a Saturday morning is inspirational. I want this council to do more to support sport of all kinds. I spent 22 years in the army, mostly playing football and rugby and golf and orienteering and all sorts of things. So sport to me is an occupation, military training. Very important. But I also know, having been involved with girls' teams, that those hundreds of girls that go down to KG5 on a Saturday morning don't use the pavilions. They never go in them. They arrive changed. They play, they go home, still in their kit. And it won't change once you go and fancy new pavilions. Parents have got other things to do. They've got more taxi jobs to do for their other children. So it's a bit disingenuous, I fear, to put this admirable use of the facilities on the playing fields as a main justification for spending £3.3 million. This paper doesn't make mention of an overall strategy for how we can improve and develop our sports provision across the district. We have a heavily underused facility not half a mile away from KG5 at Chilcombe. We need to be saying how we're going to develop that and make better use of that facility. We haven't spent £3.3 million or even £1.2 million of SIL money on the pavilion at the River Park. But why is that justified to spend anything on that one unless there's a proper strategy? And don't forget the rural areas, as Councillor Reid mentioned. Denmead has got a shortfall of as many other rural areas do. it has to be, to justify this expenditure, it has to be part of an overall plan that sets out a longer term plan. If there is no strategy against which to measure the amount of our commitment to sport and leisure, how can we say with any certainty that this large amount is justified?
Councillor Clementson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear what Councillor Godfrey is saying, and we've talked a lot about sport, and sport is very important. And of course, it's something that we all encourage, and I concur with all that's been said. But an additional 1 million at a time when it will only benefit a minority, while so many are struggling to pay household bills for food and heating. Councillor Leaney already stated that we're living in difficult times, and Councillor Todd has announced a 200k to assist many residents in need. Winchester has just had millions spent on the most amazing leisure centre built in the city, and I find it difficult to accept such extravagant spending, even though I accept that it will provide jobs and possible future income. But I ask myself, is it morally right at this time to be spending an additional 1 million of funds when we are asking so many people to give up so many things just to make ends meet? Should we not be leading by example and putting on hold such a beneficial but not critical spending? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Horrell, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak in the debate. And I think this evening we've heard great cross-party support for the Pavilion project. And we were having a really very useful question session. We were all learning. I heard new news about the governance that I hadn't heard before, and concerns were being clarified. So what?
Turn your mic on, please.
A reasonable question. And then a member of the other side of the chamber said we were nitpicking, when in fact it's our democratic right to ask questions. And in fact, we were coalescing around a really good project and understanding the detail. Why is everyone so concerned about being asked questions and having that open and transparent debate? And why did the other side have to start to have a dig about nitpicking? It actually doesn't put us in good shape, Mr. Mayor. It actually doesn't make us look good to our residents when this, as Councillor Learney said, should be a joyous project. So I question, when we're having a reasonable, positive discussion, and I believe another member of your side confirmed that earlier, and we were trying to all support and clarify and get the details right, did we have to go to that level of discussion? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Porter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought it'd be an opportunity to advertise the principle of the SIL system. I've been the cabinet member for the portfolio, which includes SIL, on and off for 2 or 3 years, and actually at no stage has anybody come to me from the outer areas, can I describe, and I include myself in covering that, for that money. In fact, I only went recently to my own ward and said, you haven't applied for any SIL. What are you doing? Because I can see, as you can see, when you go to your parish councils, how much SIL is actually received by that parish. It's a very simple mathematical calculation If they've got 15%, you know the county, when you know the city council is holding the other 85%. So it's not difficult for you to find at any time. And I certainly recommend you to do so if you're sitting at a parish council meeting. Councillor Cook knows it especially well, and it's really heartening because if I look at the money that's been spent, Colden Common has had quite a lot. They're very good at asking for SIL, and they've had something pretty much every year. And we work really well with them to do it because they're good at delivering, as are other parishes. So this year, sports facilities were provided, money for sports facilities were provided in 3 areas from this year's application. They were facilities for bike riding, BMX riding, and also public footpaths, but 3 particular areas were for sports facilities. And also Sheffield has had 50,000 for their extension and refurbishment of the existing pavilion, and it was allocated because they didn't have enough money, so £100,000 had previously been allocated and another 50,000 was allocated this year. So please, don't think that this is all true. It isn't true. The money is spread around the city and including the whole district. And if you want to apply for that money, and if you want a larger amount, come and justify it, just as this particular application did. And we are sitting, listening, waiting for those comments and for those requests. It's not a closed book. It's something where we actively want to spend that SIL on things that tie up with our actual local council plan. Please do apply, get your parishes to apply, get that money spent and get it used, not just sitting in the bank while the costs of things are going up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Members, I've got 3 more names on my list and then I wish to close the debate, okay? So the first one is Councillor Radcliffe, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As a ward member for St Michael, you won't be surprised to hear that I strongly support this investment. I'm sure we all wish that these additional funds weren't necessary, but with inflation ripping through the economy and the cost of construction soaring, the increase in the total build cost is, I'm afraid, something that we just have to swallow. Any further delay only risks the bill rising further, so I support us getting on with it. But the reason I'm in favour of this spending is I believe that it will deliver long-term benefits for so many people at so many levels in so many places throughout our district. For local people living nearby in Highcliffe, certainly, it will provide not just better sporting facilities, but also a much needed space for community events and activities. But the biggest benefits lie far beyond Highcliffe and indeed far beyond St Michael. KGV is used as a training ground, as we've heard, by dozens of sports teams from right across Winchester and beyond. Teams from the Worthies, Compton, Otterbourne, Littleton, Sutton, Scotney and Bishop's Waltham all regularly train and play matches there, as do dozens of teams in the Hampshire Girls Youth Football League, and as we've heard, the Winchester City Flyers, whose teams use KGV for most of their matches. And as a result, KGV has become one of the district's most important sporting grounds and a real hub for girls and women's football in particular. District funds should, of course, be spent prudently, with priority given to projects that have value for the whole district. But I think the new pavilion at KGV meets that standard and then some. Once built, it will be much more than just a local community facility. It will be a Winchester district facility, an asset for all our residents. And for that reason, it deserves all of our support. And I hope you'll join me in voting enthusiastically in favour of the proposal before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reach, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rapidly approaching 40 in both age and, tragically, waistline, I'm acutely aware of how important a healthy cardiovascular system is. At the heart is the heart. A great way to promote heart health is through sport, just like football. And I'm absolutely thrilled, as a fellow St Michael ward member, that St Michael and Bar End, where I live, is becoming the beating heart of our district. Strengthening our core and strengthening our arteries and veins that spread right the way out to the far corners of our district. And I'm so proud that our corner of Winchester is that beating heart. So I will enthusiastically support this, and I hope everyone else will tonight. Thank you very much.
Oh, Councillor Edwards, please.
Buses, St Michael councillors come in threes. I've agreed, of course, with everything that my colleagues have said. Upstanding, Mr Mayor. And I couldn't countenance, as a ward member, a cancellation of this project. And indeed, I don't believe that's the mood of this meeting. There is no debate about the existing pavilions. They are worn out, completely unfit for purpose, and a replacement has been promised to the local community and to the sporting public across the district for a very, very long time. But £1 million is still, even these days, a lot of money, and we need to consider carefully all the options. And I think that's what has been presented to us this evening, a careful explanation of why this is the best option. As Councillor Lerny has explained, the range of bids was quite narrow when we tendered for this project. Now, that suggests, I think, that we're not suddenly going to find someone building a good pavilion at half the price. I don't know about the ONS Steel Price Index, but I did have a new garden fence a few months ago, and every time a new quote came in, it was higher than the one that I'd thought was expensive the first time. So going back, retendering, delaying is only going to end up spending more money for something possibly not as good. Reducing the size of the pavilion doesn't make sense either. A smaller pavilion wouldn't meet the standards set by our co-funders, the Football Federation had been mentioned, for example, nor accommodation for all the teams coming for large events. There are a lot of pitches on that field. And nor, most important, provide for the various community needs that people who live nearby are hoping to make of the new facility. And finally, reducing the quality doesn't make sense. If we're going to build a pavilion after so much waiting and after so much talk, let's do it right. The designs are not opulent, there are no gold taps, but they will give us a distinctive and high quality building. One that will stand up to heavy use, be energy efficient to run, be flexible to cope with future needs, and I hope become a source of pride across the area. I suppose, at the risk of further delay, we could specify slightly cheaper materials, not pay the final proverbial halfpenny worth of tar, but cutting corners is not the way to get savings and reliability in the long term. And so I'm content, more than content, to vote for the extra funding, which we do have available from what I'm going to call Winchester's Community Infrastructure Levy, the whole of Winchester, city and all, to make a fantastic new facility for people in and around the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Todd, would you like to...
I'll have a go at this. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. I confess to being well past 40, both in age and in waistline, but I did appreciate Councillor Reach's analogy of the beating heart and the vital role of this as a district facility for many sports, for many people, for many community activities. And it was great also to hear unanimity in terms of our, almost unanimity, in terms of our desire to particularly appreciated the expert perspective of Councillor Cremoyson in talking about the issue. I recognise that Councillor Clemenson had questions about the money being spent at this particular time. And I think we all in this chamber share her concern about people who are under pressure because of the cost of living crisis at the moment. The way that the Community Infrastructure Levy works is that it is not possible to spend it on the kind of activity that she refers to. And so that, unfortunately, is not an option. And so we're presented with the choice as to whether it's the right time to spend it now and it's the right amount to be spending now. Councillor Pearson raised the point of saying he didn't want to see us spending more than £3.3 million. And actually, the level of inflation that Councillor Tippett-Cooper referred to that we see at the moment gives us real urgency in the need to authorise this expenditure and move ahead with the project. Councillor Godfrey, and Councillor Godfrey had a question that he wanted to ask, and I would say to Councillor Horrell, the decision on how meetings are chaired is not a matter of the administration. The Mayor is neutral. I had absolutely no say. We had no say as an administration as to whether questions were curtailed or not, and that is appropriate. It is right that the Mayor is neutral and that I'm not able to sit up there and lean on him and say, stop taking questions. Unfortunately. I would like to respond to Councillor Godfrey's question. I'm absolutely more than happy to share the figures that I've been sent by officers in terms of where SIL has been generated and where it's been spent, because it does raise some interesting questions. The truth is, the two wards, I don't know if people know the two wards that have raised the most SIL, and it is, I would say, they are twice as much as any other ward in the district. And you probably don't know who they are, but I'll tell you anyway. And that is St Paul and Bishop's Waltham. So they have taken more development than anybody else. And actually, relatively, neither ward has had very much spent in it. And I think that recognises the nature of the community infrastructure levy. It is designed to look at the pressures that are put throughout the district as a result of extra development. We do need to be mindful of where that development is, but we will make choices at times where we spend money where the money hasn't been raised. A good example of a district facility, Councillor Godfrey talked about Chilcombe, is the upgrade to the Chilcombe Pavilion. Chilcombe Parish has raised absolutely no money at all, not a single penny in community infrastructure levy. But we have spent £135,000 upgrading the pavilion there. Councillor Bolton talked about rural areas. The ward that is closest to the pavilion that we are building, and it's considerably closer than my ward of St Paul, is his own. Most of the wards in the district are either in the city or border the city. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be thinking about the development pressures in the other parts of the district. And I welcome the positive response that Councillor Brooke made to us having a look at the strategic need, not just of the leisure facilities, for example, that Councillor Reid referred to, but the other areas that we might want to be spending in. The local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, for example, when we have a district one and when we have a city one, I personally, and it is a matter for the council, not for me, am interested in seeing that we properly dedicate funds to that. I was maybe a bit flippant to the point that Councillor Isaacs made earlier. There's an important point also when we look at communities like Alresford. We shouldn't just look at the money raised in Alresford, because people visit Alresford from all kinds of other parts of the district. It's an important asset, a beautiful Georgian town, an important asset to the rest of the district and indeed the rest of the county. And we need to think, if there is a need for improved toilet capacity in Alresford, then that's a conversation we need to have. Councillor Reid also talked about the fact that these structures are no longer fit for purpose. The one bit of Councillor Godfrey's argument I was less convinced by is if you have absolutely horrible pavilions, then you shouldn't be hugely surprised if women fail to use it. My understanding is that women tend to have slightly higher standards in terms of cleaning room facilities and toilets than men, perhaps. So I believe we have a good consensus across the room, across the chamber, in terms of the motion before us here tonight, and that we do all support what's in front of us. It's a good use of public money. It's a good facility for the district, and I hope we can support it all unanimously or near unanimously this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Councillor Lerney, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As usual, the leader has said enough for all of us.
Thank you. Please can I now put to the vote the recommended minute of Cabinet on page 2 of the agenda pack. Please can I see a show of hands? All those in favour? Yep. Any against? No. Thank you very much. One. Sorry, I didn't see one. All right, sorry. Any abstentions? No. Thank you. That's carried, members. Members, the next item of business this evening is agenda item 6, changes to committee memberships. Mrs. Kirkman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been notified of the following changes to membership of committees. For Health and Environment Policy Committee, Councillor Westwood is to replace Councillor Tippett Cooper as a full member of the committee, and Councillor Tippett Cooper is to replace Councillor Becker as a deputy. For the Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Cromoyson is to replace Councillor Becker as a full member of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Agenda item 7 is questions from members of council. All members have copies of the questions and answers, which was circulated electronically prior to the meeting and also available on the council's website. A reminder that our procedure is that only one questioner is able to ask a supplementary question and should indicate accordingly. Members are reminded that our procedure rule allow a total time occupied by questions and the answers and the supplementary and shall not exceed 30 minutes. Thank you. Pardon. Right. In order to maximise the opportunity for questions to be answered, can I ask that supplementary questions are succinct and to the point, please? Question 1 is from... Oops, sorry, I got the wrong page. Councillor Wallace, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the Chair for the response. Obviously, this is a complicated issue around GPs and their availability, and one for which the Council is not directly responsible. However, my supplementary question is, do you think that the meetings you've laid out are sufficient for Winchester Council to influence the local health authority, or do you think there's more that we should be doing?
Councillor Todd, please.
Thank you very much indeed. It has been a continuous struggle by districts of all colours to try and ensure that our voices are heard more on health issues. We have worked very closely with other districts in the county to try and ensure that, for example, the leader of Basingstoke has ended up as a representative on the county, ICB, which looks at resourcing issues across the entire county. But it's definitely the case that we would like more presence at the table. However, that is not currently the position. In terms of the overall democratic process, there are the institutions in place for locally elected representatives, in particular county councillors, to hold the NHS and its policies to account. And I speak from personal experience as a former member of the Health and Adult Services Committee, where any changes in configuration by law have to be presented to that committee, and performance issues and the particular issues that relate to services in Hampshire can be properly scrutinised. And I think it's an important point when you look at health services that a lot of them don't naturally fit into district areas. So it is very true that, for example, for primary care, there is a greater fit. But for example, when we're looking at issues like hospital reconfiguration, then you often need to look across a wider area. Even within the context of questions of primary care. Inconveniently, the NHS has chosen to organise itself in a way that doesn't follow district boundaries at all. So it does make that engagement harder. Where we are trying to influence things for the long term is through our local plan and also through direct representation to the health authorities. The principle of 15-minute living is one that we have embedded in the local plan, and I have raised the question with the ICB and their representatives of what 15-minute health looks like. How can we bring health closer to people? That may not necessarily mean provision of GP surgeries, but it does mean that we need to be thinking about how we we move away from a model that sometimes can be a bit too nonchalant about the amount of travel that is needed by patients in order to access healthcare.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Clear, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do have a supplementary, and I thank the portfolio holder for her answer and say I look forward to seeing you next Monday in Wickham. But may I just ask about the status of our bid for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and also the Rural Fund? Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Clear, for your supplementary. And I too am really looking forward to coming down to Wickham on Monday and discussing how we might help them, help the parish council there with the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So I just thought it was an opportunity here to update everyone on the status of our bid. We have submitted our outline investment plans as indicated in the report that I presented to Cabinet back in July. Happily, those plans met with approval by the government in the first round, but although we were expecting to receive the first tranche of money, around £50,000, round about now in October, sadly I can report that nothing has yet been received. Officers are chasing this for confirmation, and I hope to have more news by our next meeting of Cabinet in a couple of weeks' time. In addition to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the government has also indicated that we will be given an allocation of £740,000 in a new rural fund, which will run for 2 years from 2023. And it will run pretty much alongside the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which, as I say, is our allocation is £1 million, which we are hoping to get confirmation of. As with all government funds, we need to go through the hoops and submit our investment plan for this fund by the end of November. And again, I will be bringing a paper forward to the November Cabinet, setting out our plans on how we propose to use this fund. In the meantime, we are in the process of setting up a partnership board, which will comprise of a wide range of partners and stakeholders across our district, as well as member representation. And that board will look at and discuss and agree the projects that are put forward for funding via these schemes. Both of these funds offer us the opportunity to deliver small projects throughout our district, supporting our high streets and local businesses, building pride in our communities and investing in skills and training. And certainly all those sort of projects are exactly what I've been discussing with our market towns when I've had my meetings with them. And of course, these sources of money are extremely welcome, and we are pressing the government hard to deliver on their commitment to us and our communities and actually get their act together and send us the first tranche of money, which is what they agreed to do. It's really clear that going forward we need to do all we can to support our communities and particularly our high streets and businesses at a time when the cost of fuel is rising, the cost of labour is rising because businesses are having to increase wages in order to retain and attract staff. And at the very same time when consumers are being very careful about what they spend their money on. It is going to be a difficult time for us, our residents and all our businesses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. There's a few of them tonight. Councillor Bolton has question 3, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Porter, for your reply. I've just got a couple of concerns with it. One is that because of Reg 18 going out to the parishes now, and in the absence of a statement of common ground, I wonder whether by setting out a framework of how we approach the parishes that straddle the authorities, this might be a way of providing the parishes with more information of how they will be treated in relation to the plans developed over their entire parish. So more of a holistic approach. I've looked at other statements of common ground, and they really only ratify the duty to cooperate. They don't really say anything more. And I'm really sort of looking to see if we can allay any concerns there might be with regards to development coming in from either side, and that there's a sensible framework that they know is in place in advance, so that this isn't thrown in at a later stage, you know, at Reg 19 and later potentially. So I'm happy to also meet to discuss it further if that helps.
Thank you. This is a concern of mine as well, because as we've been working through the local plan and going to visit communities that have this problem, and my own ward has part in the national park and part not, it is a problem, and I know that you know I've been out to many of your wards to discuss that problem with the parish council and offered to have the city councillors there if they wish. It is a problem, and so I'm very pleased that our strategic planning manager, Adrian Fox, has actually been out and talked to the national park about this very problem. The 15-minute neighbourhood tends to mean that your centre of your village is actually right on the edge of the national park, and so the natural point from that is going back to the arteries conversation. It's out from that point back into the national park. So I'm really pleased that Adrian has got an informal conversation which shows a figure actually in our local plan to be delivered in the national park, which far exceeds what we've had before. That statement of common ground hasn't been created yet because they can't. They've only just gone out for a call for sites, which finished on the 28th of September. They are then creating it. It is the way it works with local plans. They're all varying slightly across the whole area, but it is something we're very, very aware of. And I have had conversations with individual parishes, as have the planners, to work with them to see what they want out of this, so that we can make sure that those conversations continue. And the leader and I have also said that although the officers have been working on this, it's something now they've done their call for sites, we need to go and get that political conversation going. But yes, of course, we will be talking to all of you that have communities that are a little bit on either side. It's really important because those communities must become workable communities in themselves and not all pushed over onto our side.
Thank you. Question 4 is from Councillor Tippett Cooper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will stand up straight now. I do apologise, although I was trying to make the meeting more accessible to Councillor Pearson. Thank you to Councillor Ferguson, who appreciate he's not here, so I'm putting Councillor Todd in a slightly difficult spot. Supporting people who are seeking asylum and refugees in the district is something that's vitally important, and those refugees include our Ukrainian community, of which there are 200 families currently living in the district. Coordinating the charities and organisations supporting people seeking asylum and refugees is also vital, and Hampshire County Council previously committed to lead this coordination in response to a question from Councillor Hiscock at Hampshire County Council Full Council. We've not heard from Hampshire County Council yet, so I'd just simply ask if Councillor Ferguson could add that to the letter that she is proposing to write to the County Council on my question.
So, well, thank you very much indeed for your question, and thank you also, Councillor Tippett Cooper, for all the work you personally are doing in your role as City of Sanctuary Champion to support people seeking sanctuary in our city. It's greatly appreciated. while I'm loath to answer on behalf of Councillor Ferguson, I am sure I would be speaking on with her consent if I was to say that she would be more than happy to add that to her letter. And I'm also very happy to also talk to Councillor Hiscock to see if he's also had any further response directly at the County Council. So thank you very much indeed for your question. And I'm 99.9% certain that Councillor Ferguson will be more than happy to add it to her letter.
Thank you. Question 6, Councillor Cutler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to the leader for his response and actually announcing it, the response to my question during his announcements earlier on. Cross-border cooperation is absolutely vital to a ward like Southwark and Wickham, which has borders with Havant, Portsmouth and Fareham. And so I was a little disappointed that the invitation to the workshop on the district LC whip referred, the Hampshire County Council referred to it being important to have links with all the boroughs around the Winchester district, but didn't include Portsmouth, the unitary authority, which actually has quite a good network, is developing quite a good network of cycling and walking. So could I ask the leader if he would ensure that as part of that consultation, links to Portsmouth are included?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Cutler, for raising that point. I have had issues in the past that the county does occasionally have a bit of a blind spot in recognising the relationship between the Winchester district and Portsmouth. It was an issue in the bus service improvement plan where the communities in Winchester that should be thought of as part of the Portsmouth travel to work area were not properly reflected. And so I explicitly asked that Southwark, Wickham, Denmead, for example, and the bus routes from the city to reach those communities should be included. And when I ran into a bit of a wall, I conspired with Councillor Stallard at the County Council to get her to write in and ask that it be put in, which she promptly did, and she was much more effective than I am on that particular issue, particularly as she is the division member in that particular case. So yes, I share your concern that we tap into the work that's being done in Portsmouth to support active travel, walking and cycling. It's good to see a Liberal Democrat administration leading the way on issues like 20 mile an hour, walking, cycling, etc. And I will be happy to talk with my colleague Councillor Lerny to ensure that the needs of our district and the relationship with Portsmouth are properly reflected in the LC whip.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Question 8 is from Councillor Radcliffe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a supplementary, and it concerns the vexed question that has already exercised our time tonight of inflation in construction costs. My follow-up question is whether this inflation is also having an impact in other areas of the Council's programme of work, including, I'm thinking of the proposed new pavilion at North Walls and other improvements in the park there. And then secondly, if I may be cheeky and add a kind of related supplementary to that, is there also an effect on the viability of our major projects, notably the Central Winchester Regeneration Scheme? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Thank you very much indeed for that question. Undoubtedly, inflation is having a significant effect on project construction costs from everything we're doing. Interest rates as well will be having an effect on viability. It's important to note that we also need to keep sight on what will happen to rents and lease values and other factors which are also likely to be moving at the same time. One of the reasons why we have a model of working with an experienced developer or seeking to work with an experienced development partner, part of whose part of the criteria for which is a high level of financial expertise, is precisely because we are going to need a partner who can navigate us through these particular challenges as we look to the future. However, I remain very confident in the opportunity that we have for Central Winchester and for Station Approach, because in the end, if you look at the fundamentals of our city, if you look at the fundamental value and property values, which unfortunately for housing are often very high, but if you look at the fundamental economic situation that we are in as a city, then we will, I think, remain in a good and favourable situation compared to many other places that might be looking for redevelopment. It will force changes, and we should not assume, and nobody should assume, given current financial positions, that every project is going to be topped up to cope with the cost of inflation. There will undoubtedly be the case where we make decisions, for example, to down engineer what we might be thinking of doing. I would stress I'm not talking about that in the context of what's planned for River Park, but it will be important in everything we do that we recognise that we are in a new, at the moment, a new financial situation. There may be situations where we need to value engineer what we're proposing. There may be situations where it would be more appropriate to wait for a less unstable financial period. But rest assured, we will throughout be looking to ensure that we get the best value for public money that we can, and that we are doing what is right for the long term for the future of our city and district.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Batho, please, as question 10.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the response, thank you, Councillor Lurney, for the reply. My supplementary is to refer back to the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and acknowledge that a large part of that is conducted through Hampshire County Council. What is it that Winchester City Council can do to help and support the provision and the delivery of that plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Batho. We are supporting the updating and consultation on both the revised Winchester LC Whip and the District LC Whip. In terms of when we go forward to implementation, Councillor Todd mentioned earlier on needing to look at using a community infrastructure levy in order to implement some of the potential schemes that might come through that. And I think that's definitely an area where county will be looking to us to provide the funding, unfortunately. However, what we do hope is that the creation of these plans helps provide a structure, just like the Winchester Movement Strategy has with the Mini Holland bid, where we're able to bid for government money. And whether we do that or the county will obviously depend on the circumstance. But we will continue to work closely with them on these issues. And I'm pleased to say that I do think that the relationship with county is improving, and also their willingness to move forward with cycling and walking schemes.
Right, thank you. Question 11 is from Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for your answer, Councillor Porter. I'm afraid you missed the point of what the question was. Yes, you gave a good answer stating what is in the local plan, which I entirely agree with. But the key to my question was we only supply ourselves with 62% of the food that we eat. And yet, within the local plan, you seem to be treating the countryside, i.e. the farmlands, as areas for urban people, Swanmore, Winchester, Southampton, and so on, as a playground, rather than a food production area. If we're going to reduce, for example, the amount of pasture land, which some people say that is desirable, that means we have to import more vegetables and so on. And a lot of these vegetables, for example, soya or maize is grown on land that comes from tropical areas. Palm oil is a case, an example, but soya is as well. Some of those foods are, of course, for industrial use. Maize, for example, for ethyl alcohol, which is an additive for petrol. So when you look at that, what is the priority? What we're putting down rightly for environmental protection and climate emergency, as opposed to food production, where is your priority?
Aha, thank you. I think actually in my response, I did actually state that the City Council doesn't keep a record of farmland producing food, much of which is privately owned. So we cannot determine exactly how many acres or hectares of that land is actually producing food. They will be able to manage their farms, although we have asked for some level of management of those master plans for farms, but we do not have that record of food. Your county council, the county council does hold that data, so of the number of farms. So I suggest that you inquire of your county councillor for that. But nevertheless, what we are talking about in the local plan is countryside, and that includes food producing land. And our job is to make sure that the stewardship of all of that land is as good as we can get it by the local plan. I'm afraid we just don't have the percentage of land that's actually in our district as farmland that is producing food. We know the percentage that's countryside, but not producing food. Oh, I see. Sorry, we did actually have a conversation about your question, and I thought it was about the amount of food. Right, I thought it was about the amount of food. Well, certainly it's important to make sure that we do have enough land for our food supplies long term in this country, and that's very important. But we have to also look at the suitability of land for food, and in many cases, the land that's being rewilded isn't necessarily suitable. But I do suggest that we continue this debate with the county, or perhaps you might ask your county councillor, and I know that certainly was a conversation that was done as part of the 2050 Commission.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Cook, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I thank the portfolio holder for answering my question, but I would like to ask a supplementary, if I may. And that is, I appreciate in the report the answer it referred to the removal of chewing gum on street furniture. That's currently being reviewed. But I'd like to ask, currently, are you reviewing the amount of graffiti that is around the district and the removal of that in a number of areas of the district, especially in the Winchester City car parks? Thank you.
Thank you. I will defer to Councillor Todd on this one.
Am I responsible? That's a fine question, and there's many people who ask it.
No.
Those of you who know me may know that I'm a bit obsessed about the question of graffiti at the moment. And indeed, I asked this afternoon, it's a meeting I've been asking for some time, I gathered together not just council officers from right across the council, but also the Business Improvement District, the police, the youth offending team, to talk about how we were all going to work better together in dealing with graffiti. The amount of effort and resource that we're having to put into graffiti at the moment is spectacular. It has exploded following the pandemic, and our main focus today, in terms of the meeting we were having, wasn't about removal, where we have dramatically increased the amount of resource that we're putting into it. The representative from the BID said that currently we have 4 people working 4 days a week on graffiti removal. We are working jointly with them at the moment. We clean the whole of Chesil every day. We have to remove graffiti from the whole building almost every day. It is so. So just throwing more resource at graffiti removal is not going to solve the problem. The evidence at the moment is actually within the city. We do seem to have got on top of it and it seems to be going backwards, but in general, it remains a very serious issue. But it is an issue where just throwing resource at removing graffiti, and we are throwing resource at removing graffiti, is not an answer in itself. And we had a long conversation today with all our partners as to how we can be using our CCTV, how we can be using the cameras on our wardens, on our community wardens, on our police, on our parking wardens, the police, how we can all be working together to identify those who are currently taking part in making graffiti, but also finding an appropriate response, recognising that many of them are children, and you know the right response is complicated compared to what it might be if they were adults. So it is a very high priority for this authority, but it's and we are spending a lot more as an authority at the moment on graffiti removal. But where we will be looking to make change is identifying the people who are taking part in it, identifying the interventions that we need to make, both to prevent graffiti happening in the first place, to divert people away from taking part in the activity, and also to find suitable interventions that those who continue to sort of lead the activity and make it happen in the city. But I would stress that we are seeking to work with every partner we can in order to make progress. We're working with the schools. I've been in contact with British Telecom. So there are bodies that weren't in the room today that we're also working with, but it's a very, very high priority for us. And we are genuinely not just trying to deal with the problem after graffiti's been made, but also deal with the root cause with our partners in order to get this under control.
Right. Councillor Horrell, you've got 26 seconds to bring your question.
Mr. Mayor, I'm grateful to the portfolio holder for her response. I do have a question of clarification, please. My understanding was that the Voids retrofit programme was going to start in August, not in October, and that it wasn't just for 2 properties. That would be an ongoing piece of activity for our voids, and it's not clear to me from the response exactly what that strategy is likely to be, and which is why I'm asking whether the portfolio holder could possibly bring the meeting briefing for all of us who are interested in this area forward from the 1st of December, given the importance of the whole issue of fuel poverty for our tenants. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Clearly this is an area of slightly shared responsibility between myself and Councillor Ferguson. Certainly I'm happy to take that back and discuss with officers whether we could bring that forward. So I'll deal with that for you.
Right, thank you, members. That concludes the formal business for this evening. If anybody would like to join me in Abbey House for